Welcome back, everyone, to the program. Now, for more perspectives on the Kogi Bayelsa governorship elections, we're now being joined by the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman, Mr. Rotimi Yaga, and Mr. Samson Itodo, the Director of Yaga Africa, a civil society organization for the advocacy of for credible elections. I'd like to thank you both for joining us. I must start with you, Mr. Yaga. The Saturday governorship elections in Kogi State, it's been described as falling below the minimum standard of a credible election. How would you describe the elections in Kogi State?
Thank you very much, Millicent, for this opportunity. It is quite unfortunate that some disruptions took place in Kogi, and we have read reports of civil society organizations that observed the elections and the preliminary press statement they issued, and we are studying those reports. But, you know, essentially elections are legal processes, and there is a threshold for making a declaration. If the returning officer is not convinced that there is enough grounds to make a declaration, he wouldn't have done so. Remember that we also conducted the Kogi West Senatorial District election, and we saw how the returning officer there declared that the election is inconclusive because of the number of cancelled votes, which was far less than the number of registered voters in that area. From the standpoint of INEC, we prepared very much for this election. We thought we had everything under wraps. The security situation, we made enough arrangements with the security agencies. We didn't expect that even with the peace accord that was signed by the political actors, the kind of scenario we found in some areas occurred. You know, we have 21 local governments, over 2,500 polling units. In the post-mortem, we will study all the reports and then issue a statement. But the preliminary statement we issued, we acknowledge the fact that violence took place in several places, but obviously the returning officer didn't have enough evidence or didn't have the material evidence to say that, well, we cannot conclude this election. These are the votes, these are the cancelled votes, and looking at the Electoral Act and the Constitution, there is enough ground to declare the winner.
So if I get you right, Mr. Oyekomi, you're saying that the incidents of harassment, intimidation of voters, the electoral officials, destruction of electoral materials, snatching of ballot boxes, and the alleged killing of persons were not enough grounds to suspend the elections in Kogi State?
Well, I didn't say it's not enough grounds, but it depends on the totality of these incidences across the 21 local governments and across the 2,500 polling units in that state. And, you know, the officers in charge of those results, of those areas, will make a declaration. And as you can see at the collation center, all of them from the local government, from the polling units, made their submissions. And the totality of it, with the material evidence...
Mr. Oyekomi, let's quickly hear from Mr. Samson Itodo. I mean, Yaga and a number of civil rights organizations have expressed disappointment with the elections in both Bayelsa and Kogi State, but especially Kogi. You called for an outright cancellation. Briefly tell us, are you putting the blame at INEC's table or where?
Well, there are three institutions that we need to hold responsible. And Yaga Africa stands by its preliminary statement that the Kogi election does not meet any democratic standards or standards for credible elections, and that process was severely compromised. And that is why at Yaga Africa, we're not issuing any statements on the results, because we believe that that election should be cancelled by INEC, and for a lot of reasons. Now, it's problematic when we reduce elections to just figures. Elections happen within a context, and there are three different stages for election. In the pre-election environment, we did release a report. I'm drawing concerns that the environment was not conducive enough for elections and for the people of Kogi State to exercise their franchise. We talked about thugs, massive recruitment of thugs, arms stockpiling, and we did say before the elections that whilst INEC other stakeholders, particularly citizens and civil society, were preparing for elections. The politicians were preparing for war, and that manifested. And I'm very surprised that INEC has made a return. Yes, there's a provision in the law that compels her to do so, but the evidence actually abound that the process was severely compromised. It was disrupted by violence, and therefore we can't. And what INEC has done by this declaration, even though it's fulfillment of our legal requirements, is to a large extent an endorsement of brigandage and what others have called gunpoint elections. And it's really unacceptable. And we shouldn't, as a country, accept what actually happened in Kogi, because it has become the norm. And look at Edo, look at other elections who are coming. If we don't nip this in the bud, then we would recognize or witness this in other elections. If you look at Bayelsa, shortly we will be reissuing our PVT statement on the Bayelsa result. But just to give you an insight to that result, based on the results that we have in our PVT, the results declared by INEC fell out of our margin of error. And what that suggests is that the results declared for Bayelsa, even though the PDP, the APC candidate or the PDP candidate, one of them could have won based on the PVT data that we have, it clearly suggests that there was manipulation of the results in Bayelsa State, particularly in southern Ijaw. And this afternoon we will release details, and that is why we are unable to also verify the Bayelsa, the results declared by INEC from the Bayelsa elections. We cannot blame INEC, no doubt. Yes, the law clearly provides that. And what the politicians have done is they've mastered the provisions of the law and looked at the loopholes and have exploited it, because Section 68 of the Electoral Act is very clear. Once a declaration is made, it is final. It is only a court or a tribunal that can vacate that. And that's why we've called on INEC to audit the results for Bayelsa, particularly Southern Ijaw, and ensure that whoever was responsible for jacking up or altering figures from those locations should be brought to book. We've also
have Mr. Oyekomi's final thoughts as he responds to some of the things that you've mentioned as we wrap up the show. Mr. Oyekomi.
Well, thank you very much. The whole scenario that we have in front of us is quite unfortunate. And INEC operates on the basis of the Constitution and the Electoral Act. So when people see us take action, we are not guided by our own laws. We are guided by what the law says. I think that looking at the loopholes that people are pointing to now, and it appears many people are not satisfied with this loophole, we need to go back to the National Assembly and do the needful. Let us change those aspects that seems to give politicians that leeway to commit fraud and seemingly get away with it. Otherwise, this thing will continue. We'll continue to try our best. All officers that we employed, all ad hoc staff, all coalition officers, they were admitted the oath of loyalty to them, they are neutrality to them. They are not supposed to take sides. INEC is not a political party, but of course, the judiciary is also available for all those who are aggrieved by what we have done to seek redress, and we look forward to that.
All right, Mr. Oyekomi, we would like to thank you, and Mr. Itodo, thank you both for joining us at this time. And, you know, it's a lot of reactions trailing the elections, and we'd also like to hear what you think about it. Join the conversation on our social media platform at Channels TV at CTV Politics, #LunchtimePolitics. I'm Millicent Walker. Thank you for watching.